What's good, people? How y'all doing out there tonight? It's dreary weather. But good. Oh, man. You know what? First, before anything, I've been having so many friends from around the world, from different countries around the world, just popping up and showing me random love. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just come to me like, yo, I really appreciate what you do. They inbox me. I really appreciate what you do. Thank you so much. Hey, you helped me make sense of this. You helped me make sense of that. I've been getting so much love, and it's like, listen, hey, I appreciate you. Anybody who's trying to understand me, who's trying to really get benefit from the things that I'm trying to put out here, I need you to understand that I appreciate you. I appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? Just recently, I had a homegirl of mine. You know, she and I, we had sort of a falling out, right? And out of nowhere, you know, she hits me up the other day. Hey, you know what? I was bugging. I was tripping. My bad. Donald, you've never been anything but good to me. You've only helped me through things. I'm sorry that, you know, some of my old damage got in the way of me seeing that for the moment, but I appreciate you. And the reason why I'm even bringing all of this up is because these people, what they demonstrate more than anything is a desire to understand me, a desire to see where I'm coming from. You know, sometimes it might take you a while to get there, but in the end, the main thing that matters, the main thing that really helps connect the dots for people, especially when it comes to things that aren't within their realm of experience and or that don't necessarily conform to and verify their inner story. What helps to connect the dots is simply a desire to understand. I have all these people around the world saying, Donald, I benefit from you because I'm trying to understand you. That means something to me. It makes me feel very good. In that same vein of reasoning, you know the reason why so many people are so aggressive in the world right now? Is because at the most fundamental level, they don't feel understood. They don't feel understood. They don't feel heard. They don't feel as though their issues and their inner turmoil matters to anyone. So the only thing that they know how to do, the only tool at their disposal is this desire, this will, this need to transfer their aggression into others. I don't feel understood. It makes me angry, and I need to transfer my anger into someone. I need to transfer my aggression into someone. I spend a lot of time trying to understand people, even people who are trying to be cruel to me because what and or how I am triggers them, puts them into an aggressive state and or forces them into a headspace of cognitive dissonance. You know, the only thing that they know how to do is try and transfer their aggression into someone. And even through them trying to aggress against me, I'm not just trying to get them to understand where I'm coming from. I'm trying to get them to understand in general. I'm trying to get them to understand their motivations towards me and why they feel aggressive. I'm trying to get them to understand what I'm saying, but also get them to understand what they're saying. But beyond getting them to understand, I actually want to understand them. We all have different inner stories. We all have different inner stories. And I shouldn't say we all have different inner stories because I make it a point to not sort of generalize the entire species. I think it's fair to say that we all have different experiences in life, but because I'm not living in every person's experience, who am I to say that two experiences can't be identical? Can't, so it's best to not make assumptions in that way. However, the desire to feel understood, that's the driving force behind mankind, in my view. The desire to be understood. Every fight that you can think of, be it between lovers, friends, enemies, it boils down to misunderstanding. One person, or one party, more accurately, has it in their mind that who they're trying to communicate their inner message to is beyond communication, and as such, the only means they have to get justice in the situation is through coercion or force. Every abuser who goes around taking their inner rage out on weaker parties, why do they do it? They do it because at a fundamental level, they feel misunderstood. 9 times out of 10, they'll say that their behavior and the impacts they make on others don't necessarily match their intentions. So where's the disconnect between intention and impact? Why can the party that's on the receiving end of actions not link the action to the intention? Misunderstanding. When someone goes out of their way to understand you, it makes you feel good. Not even goes out of your way. When someone understands you, when you feel understood, it feels good. It feels good. When someone doesn't understand you and or you're not effectively able to communicate what's in your inner story to them, you become hostile. You become aggressive. You feel rejected, dejected. You feel attacked. Everyone is running around here in an aggressive state. Everybody has it in their mind that the way to fix the world is to force their inner story onto the world and to make the world conform to their perception of reality. If you just believe what I believe, then everything will be okay. If you just do as I do and or want you to do, then everything will be okay. Why? Because if you understood me, then you would see why everything matching my inner story is the best way for things to be. Feeling misunderstood. It causes you to feel aggressive. It makes you experience aggression. As I mentioned in earlier video series, aggression and cognitive dissonance, they're one and the same. When someone does not edify your internal narrative, when they do not accept your internal narrative, when they do not validate your internal narrative, it puts you in a state of cognitive dissonance. Every problem in the world traces back to this phenomenon. I don't feel understood. I don't feel accepted. I don't feel loved. I don't feel... That makes me feel aggressive. that makes me need to defend my value and worth, and by extension of my identity, which is my self-perception, necessarily entailing my sense of value and worth. I kind of trailed off there. The point is, if you don't accept me, then you are necessarily aggressing against me. And because I perceive aggression coming from you, I'm going to be aggressive too. You not accepting my inner story is you trying to force your inner story on me. So we're lost in this pointless spiral of contests, this pointless spiral of competition. It doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any better. Let's reel this down a bit. Whoa, let's see where we're at. So this is kind of where we're at with everything right now. Right now, I feel good because people around the world are going out of their way to try to understand me. Not even going out of their way. A lot of times, English isn't even their first language. But the desire to understand what I'm saying, it does all the connective work. It does all the connective reasoning. You have people who, some of whom I've grown up with. Some of whom I've been in relationships with. We've spent a lot of time around each other. Yet they don't understand me. They don't understand what I'm saying to them. They don't understand the frames. They don't understand the principles. Yet you have people who don't even speak English as a first language who understand me perfectly. Why? The desire to understand is what does the majority of the work for you. A desire to understand is what does the majority of the connective reasoning for you. You ever been trying to learn a new craft or, I don't know, learn a new subject? You ever been trying to learn something new and it seemed impossible to grasp? Impossible to grasp. But then you come across something that piques your interest and all of a sudden you're a savant. That ever happened to you before? You know why that happens? Because when you come across something that interests you, you're intrinsically motivated to learn. You want to understand. When you come across something that you don't necessarily care for, something that doesn't necessarily pique your interest, you have this huge uphill battle you have to traverse, wherein your mind, you've created these barriers to why this thing is unappealing to you, and you have to figure out how to traverse those barriers. It's added mental work. You don't have an interest in it, then all of a sudden, it's an uphill battle to learn. Why? Because you have no inherent desire to understand it. The desire to understand does the majority of the work for you. It goes into relationships. It goes into relationships, right? When you actually want to understand your mate, you rarely fight. You rarely pick fights when you want to understand them. Conversely, if you just want them to understand you, you're probably fighting all the time. But you get two people who are trying to understand each other together, the desire to understand each other and pay attention to the system of interactions between them, that's what makes for a healthy relationship. But it's based in a desire to understand. I want to know your experience. I want to know what's important to you and how to get you from where you presently are to where you're ultimately trying to go and or where you need to get to. I want to understand you. People who are narcissistic. They're generally very argumentative. Very, very argumentative. And the reason why is because they're continually trying to force their inner story onto the world around them. And in this process, they rarely take new information in. They can't see anything above or beyond the scope of self-interest. They're not trying to understand anyone. They want people to understand them. They're not trying to understand anyone. They just want to be understood. There's no mutualism. There's no reciprocity. There's just, I matter. If you are not an extension of my desires and of my will, then you are necessarily an enemy to me. If you don't reflect my inner story back to me, then you are my enemy and you've triggered me. Again, narcissism, it is a product of trauma. People who've been traumatized, they erect these shields around them, and their identity becomes this sword and shield combo wherein they have to cut everyone and everything down around them because they need to matter. They need to be seen. They need to be understood. The great irony in that is the more you work to understand others, is the more others will work to understand you. The more work you do to understand others is the more others will do work to understand you. So instead of trying to force your inner story onto people, share the floor. Share the stage. You don't have to be the star. You can put on a hell of a play, though. Biggest problem with the parasitic mind is that it thinks it can solve every problem with force, and authority, and control. Ironically, everything that it wants is on the other side of mutualism. And that is something that most people, especially those who are still in the narcissistic state of mind, simply can't grasp. You're trying to chop the world down and force everything to conform to you, when in reality, the best way to get everything that you want is to sync up with others and to sync up with reality. You know, my brother reached out to me earlier today, and he had asked me the question, he asked, what is the essence of man? Now, I want to spend a little bit of time unpacking this because it necessarily ties into the point that I was speaking to earlier about wanting to feel understood. Mankind, humans, are a transmuted species. Okay? Now, again, I'm something called an avatar. I host an entity which allows me to see reality in absolute pitch for the most part. I still go through layers of, what is the word that I'm looking for? I hate trying to translate principles into English, man. Sometimes it's just a lot. But, you know, I'm there. So there are different layers and levels of a perspective I'm afforded at a time. So my understanding for all of these effects continues to grow and evolve the more that I'm shown like a broader scope of reality through this and or by this thing performing through me. So it's really interesting. But the reason I mention that is because the fundamental nature of man, we're a parasitic species. We were transmuted. We we are recombinant. Okay? It's the easiest way to say it. We're recombinant. And it follows the same sort of frame that you would expect for any disease to follow. A pathogen landed on the body of the planet. It fashioned life forms. It inserted its RNA coding into, and then basically used them as slaves. So, in order to understand the fundamental nature, the fundamental essence of man, you have to understand the fundamental essence of parasitism. Right? Which is why things like me exist. Parasitism. How does parasitism come to be? Well, for every parasite that's on this planet, which includes diseases, virion, certain species of mammals, certain species, including humans, certain species of avian, the avian variety, insects, fish, such as lamprey, eels, like leeches, mosquitoes. These are all structural building blocks belonging to a parasitic twin universe, which is burrowing into, transforming the body of its sibling. You know, the reason it's important to understand this is because it goes to the nature of man. Because this parasitic twin universe is in a corrupt state, it has a tendency to play out the same series of principles over and over and over again. It's a recursion loop. All right? So what's happening on the micro scales is happening on the macro scales. It's the same shit over and over and over again. It goes up to extraterrestrials and microbes and all these other things. These are parasitic, corrupt building blocks doing damage to the body of its twin, to its sibling. All right? Now, and forgive me as I have to dial into this because again, it's like just reading principles on this. It's a lot. It's a lot, and they're kind of broad. So I'm gonna see if I can narrow this down. But when we get to the essence of man, man performs and thinks like a parasite. It wants to live and benefit at the expense of others. It follows the same trajectory, and it basically does everything that you would expect a disease to do, and or a virus to do, and or a parasite to do. So, for instance, let's say you get sick. Well, a gang of life forms, basically, they latch onto and then they spread throughout the various systems in your body. They transform your structural building blocks. They reroute minerals. They, basically create artifacts in order to offset their natural deficits. A disease is, for all intents and purposes, it is an incomplete life form. Okay? And what it does is it latches onto and exploits the body of whatever it attaches to towards supplementing and offsetting its natural deficits. Okay? So if you think about how humans perform, especially some of the more aggressive strains of humans, they invade systems, invade territories, violent, aggressive campaigns, invade territories, steal up all the resources, destroy the building blocks that are there, and imprison them and brutalize them and murder and consume them. And then once everything is sort of used up within a given system, on to the next, if not trying to maintain the system that's already been transformed and or transmuted while expanding into new territory. Think about it like, again, this parasitic twin, what would you expect it to do? It's this mass, this incomplete life form that's latched onto and is burrowing into and cannibalizing the body of its twin And it's trying to hold its position while overtaking new systems. The fundamental nature of man. The fundamental nature of man is parasitism. If you've been paying attention to anything that I've been saying to this point in my greater body of work, parasitism is an extension of the greater body of corruption. Corruption is the entity that religion refers to as Satan or devil. All right? So, for instance, whenever you see anyone doing something corrupt in society, they're being motivated by and or are in league with the devil. Can't make this stuff up. It's just the way it works. So, the fundamental nature of man, it is parasitism. Now, let's not say that's the fundamental nature of man. Let's say that's the default nature of man. Humans have something called free will. When you have free will, you get to choose between natural organization, balance, or you get to choose between corruption and or parasitism and or selfishness. You can choose between mutualism, or you can choose between selfishness. Which will you choose? That is what determines what you are. You get free will. There are a lot of species that don't get free will. They just, hey, you're born a parasite, you die a parasite. Bad for you. You don't get a chance to make a choice, and I'm saying for a lot of parasites, they don't get a chance to make a choice regarding what their true nature is. But for humans, you practice. You practice being the type of life form that you want to be. So, you choose your nature. You become what you practice doing most. But everything related to what is the fundamental essence of man, you started off being a recombinant life form, which was given a basic set of instructions. Multiply, become many, fill the earth, and subdue it. Consume, consume, consume. Fight for authority. Fight to be the best. Fight to have power. Fight. You're an aggressor life form. You're an aggressive life form. You don't live for balance. You live for authority, for the ability to impose your will onto things in the same way that aggressor cells coming from this parasitic twin would try to impose their will on the body of their sibling. By nature, in the same way as you would expect it to be the case for a disease, you're naturally competitive. You're naturally aggressive. You're naturally narcissistic. Not even naturally, you were created that way. But it doesn't have to be the way you live. It only is the way you live when or if you decide to practice living that way. Brother, observe the word! Let me see. Does free will have to do with how humans were restructured or how we're supposed to function on the body of this planet? As usual, great question. Love you, bro. Kinda. So, let me say it like this, and I'm going to read your question again just to make sure I answer it in proper context. Does human free will have to do with how we're restructured or how we're supposed to function on the body of this planet. Free will has to do with choosing between harmony and choosing between disharmony. So I want you to understand, again, corruption is an entity. It's an entity. It's sort of, I'll get into that probably in another podcast, but it's an entity. Reality is an entity. Which one you're tuned to is the one that you listen to most. If you listen to corruption, you're going to live corruptly. If you listen to nature and reality, you're going to live more for balance. If you live more for corruption, then you're going to be more given to the identity. You're going to be more given to the inner story. You're going to be more given to idealism. Pardon me. If you live for, reality, then you're going to be more for truth and honesty and transparency and authenticity. But free will boils down to humans choosing between which system motivates them towards life. Which system motivates them towards life? We are half natural, we're half created. We're half natural and half created. Which side are you going to lean to? Who's steering the ship? Who's your master? Because you can't serve both. And hopefully I answered that well enough for you. But when it comes to how we're supposed to function on the body of this planet, finding the balance in that is tough. And I'm saying this as a dude who can see reality and principles. That's a tough one, man. Because, we come into the game so late. Like, in terms of the development of technology and all those other things, like, we come into the game so late that trying to figure out what living in balance with the planet means, given our current state and condition and the dependency we have on, like, transmutation and technology and consuming life forms and all those other things. Finding the balance in there, that's something that really requires a good deal of thought and consideration. And I'm saying that as a dude who can see fucking answers. Matrix style. I'm like, that's a tough one. I don't even figure that out. That's rough. That's rough. By the way, hey, brother, I'm sorry. You know what? First of all, you one of the very first, you one of the I want to say very first, but it's like you one of the people who've been around for some time who's actually gone out of his way to understand what I'm talking about. Like, that's something that means something, like, and just in the same way that I have a desire to understand you, that's what the basis of good friendships and relationships are. When you want to understand someone, you can. But if you want to block information out and block what people are saying out because they get in the way of your identity, then you're not going to understand them. I've been fortunate to come across more and more people who are given to wanting to understand what I'm talking about. And funny enough, most of them don't come from around me. Jesus was like, a prophet will never preach in their hometown. Yes. But you can preach from your hometown. With oat milk. Man, I didn't know that oat milk was as rich and creamy as they make it now. This is fantastic. Well, the point is this, and hopefully I'm doing decent in trying to explain the fundamental essence of man and nature of man, but I'm going to see if I can make it as succinct as possible. From jump, especially through the socialization process, we're groomed to think and behave and consume like parasites. When you reach a state of autonomy and or understanding, you get a choice. Are you going to continue to live as a parasite, which is a corrupt life form, or are you going to start trying to understand how to live harmoniously and in balance with the system and systems and individuals and life forms around you? Are you going to try and find that happy medium, or are you going to try and stick to your guns? This is free will. fundamental essence of man. Parasitism with a caveat. Yeah, hey, you got a choice. Who you gonna serve? And this is something I want to explain to y'all. This is, again, we want to talk about where parasitism came from and its sources from corruption. So I want you to think about it like this. And I did a video on this some years back, but so this parasitic twin universe, how this parasitic twin universe came to be was it almost died. It was trapped in between a state of life and death, and because there was sort of a glitching in its coding, the greater system of corruption came in and violated the body of this infant. The parasitic twin universe was violated by corruption. And this poor life form, the only thing that its structural building blocks know how to do is to try and transfer all of the pain and the distortion that came along with corruption violating its being. It's trying to transfer that into its sibling's body. So, and this is something that's really fucked up about being an avatar. You see all of this playing out mechanically, and you see this injured life form that was violated by this thing that took advantage of it when it was in a state of uncertainty. And the only thing that it knows how to do is try to hurt the thing next to it in order to survive. It's tragic. Like when you see this on like the higher scales of plane, when you understand that corruption, it like this host, this entity, it attacked this life form because it just got trapped in a state of in-between. When you understand that all parasitism, it comes from trauma. That's even more of a reason for why I try and do the work that I do, because you understand that these corrupt cells, from extraterrestrials all the way up to the jackasses at the top of society, when you understand that all of these corrupt cells are operating from a space of trauma, it changes everything. You don't have the strong desire to go in and punish and hurt and injure. You're like, oh shit, you're doing this because to the core of what you are, you're hurting and you don't know why. And you don't know how to articulate and organize the experience. So the only thing you know how to do is aggress and attack and destroy shit. Oh my God. You're hurting. And it's the cells of a baby. And you're like, fuck. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. And then it's like even worse. You know, again, we're about to become a conjoined twin. Both these universes are about to become a conjoined twin, and then all cellular building blocks that remain in a state of aggress, they have to get purged by the corruption, by the distortion, which is reality's cleansing system, and that's how it takes all the corruption out of the principled expressions, out of the spirits of these aggressor cells, and you're like, fuck. So you were already violated by corruption, and because you carry corruption in you, you gotta you're going to have to get fucked up again, and none of this is your fault. There's no, like, again, I tell people this all the time. If you, nobody would sign up to be an avatar. Nobody would. Because it's just heartbreak all around. It's nobody's fault that we're in this situation, but, you know, we do ultimately have to choose between which master we'll serve. You choose corruption, then you choose parasitism and selfishness and imbalance and narcissism and aggression and competition. You're choosing corruption, or you're choosing reality. I'm doing everything in my power to help y'all choose reality, man. Because none of this is fair. None of this shit is fair. It's wild. And it's like, man, it's like, you know, even worse, it's like I'm sitting here and it's like, as Avatar, I'm thinking beyond the fusion of the universes and shit like that. I'm over here worried about what kind of life this conjoined twin is going to have. I'm sitting here like a worried, concerned parent. Like, God damn. What kind of life is this kid going to have? And it's no, these children who just happen to share a fused body, and there's no win in this. I'm legit worried for them. The same way I would if it was just my kid. This is wild, man. Anywho, hopefully, I don't know how this podcast turned out, but hey, we just keep it honest. We keep it a buck. So I think I'm gonna wrap up here, man. This is crazy. This whole thing is crazy, man. This whole thing is crazy. It's absolutely bananas. So everything that I'm doing at the level I'm performing on, I'm trying to help as many cellular building blocks that are humans, and then extraterrestrials or whatever, species that can understand me. I'm trying to help as many of them flip their coding so they don't have to go into the distortion, because, again, none of this is any of their fault. We were all born into a circumstance we did not create and had no hand in contributing to. And we were given a baton and told to win the race, and we didn't even know what we were racing for. Yeah. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get to this. Y'all already know what it is. I am on I'm on Facebook Live. Obviously, I'm shooting this here. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube, to which I post all of these podcasts, and then also I'm on Medium. I need to post something new there too. But you guys can check me out in any of these other places. I've been doing this work for a long time, and for those of you who have been able to reach through the work that I've been doing, I'm grateful that you try to understand me. Thank you. Genuinely. If you want to join the Patreon family, you can find me at Patreon. Avatar Cycle XIII. You can also, if you ever want to make a donation, you can hit me up on Cash App at Donnie Kang. All proceeds go to building this up to a larger platform. I want to reach as many people as I can before I'm out of this body. And yeah, man. So, didn't have a lot of Didn't have a lot of interaction tonight. Brother Absurd, I appreciate you chiming in. But, yeah, man. This is one point that I want to end on. This parasitic twin universe ties into what I was talking about at the very beginning of the video. It's hurting. And for all intents and purposes, at least by what I see through principles, it's trying to transfer its hurt and its sense of violation into its sibling's body because it wants to be understood. Think about it like a kid with special needs that gets hurt and immediately they go and try and attack someone else. They try to make someone understand their pain. All of the people who are at the top of society who are doing all this villainous, this, for lack of a better expression, evil shit to those they perceive to be beneath them, they're trying to make someone know their pain. They're trying to make someone know their insecurity and their feelings of powerlessness and uncertainty. It's an echo. What's happening at the universal scale is passing down to and throughout the structural building blocks of all the beings it's comprised of. This echo: aggress, compete, destroy, self-idealize. Aggress, compete, destroy, self-idealize. Again, it's fucking heartbreaking, man. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. My people, for those of y'all who tuned in, I appreciate you. And, shit, we're going to run it back next time. But hope y'all have a wonderful evening. Stay safe out here in these streets because it's kind of slippery. Anyway, love y'all. Appreciate you.